My wife said, "My business trips keep our future secure. Stop controlling me." When I asked about a $2,500 charge, then flew off to another conference, I replied, "Okay," and worked 6 10-hour shifts a week, until one travel record exposed. I, 36 min, work as a warehouse supervisor at a medical supply company. 6 days a week, 10-hour shifts, steady pay. My wife Sasha, 34F, is a pharmaceutical sales rep. Good money, lots of travel, high-pressure job. We've been married 9 years, always had joint finances, and I thought we had a solid marriage. This whole thing started in July when Sasha began traveling way more frequently for work. Sales conferences, client meetings, training seminars, 2 to 3 times per month instead of her usual once every few months. I didn't think much of it initially. Pharma sales is competitive, and she'd been pushing for a promotion. The trips were always Thursday through Sunday, sometimes extending into Monday. She'd come back exhausted but in a good mood, talking about networking opportunities and potential new accounts. I was actually proud of her for being so dedicated to advancing her career. Then I started noticing charges on our joint American Express card that didn't make sense. First was a $20,500 charge labeled Premium Services in August. When I asked Sasha about it, she got immediately defensive. "It's a work expense that got billed to the wrong card," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "I'll get it sorted out." $2,500? For what kind of work expense? Decker, seriously, you're tracking my spending now? It's probably the conference hotel package or something. I'll handle it. The way she said it made me feel like I was being unreasonable for asking about a major charge on our shared card. So I dropped it. Then in September, another weird charge. $1,800 for Luxury Concierge LLC. This time when I brought it up, Sasha completely lost it. "Are you serious right now? You're monitoring every single thing I spend money on?" "Sasha, these are huge charges on our joint account. I'm not monitoring anything. I'm asking about expenses I don't recognize. This is exactly why I feel suffocated in this marriage," she said, and started crying. "You're treating me like a child, like I need your permission to spend money. These are work-related expenses that my company will reimburse, but you're acting like I'm hiding something from you." She went on for 20 minutes about how controlling I was being, how she felt like she couldn't breathe in our relationship, how I didn't trust her. By the end of it, I was apologizing for asking legitimate questions about our finances. That's when I should have known something was seriously wrong. When someone makes you feel guilty for asking reasonable questions, they're probably hiding something. But Sasha was so good at flipping the script that I started questioning my own judgment. Now here's where I'm wondering if I'm the asshole. Last month, our accountant asked for all our W-2s and expense records for tax prep. Sasha was away at another conference, so I logged into her company portal to download her travel statements. What I found made my stomach drop. According to her corporate travel records, not a single hotel she'd stayed at matched the cities she'd told me she was visiting. The July Chicago conference. Her company card showed a boutique hotel in Atlanta. The September Dallas client meetings, hotel charges in Nashville. Every single trip for the past 6 months had been lies about the locations. But it got worse. The hotel charges weren't just for rooms. They were for couples' spa packages, romantic dinners billed to the room, premium wine service, late-night room service for 2 people. I cross-referenced these with our joint Amex charges. Those mysterious premium services and luxury concierge payments. I Googled them. High-end escort services and sugar daddy website premium memberships. My wife hadn't just been cheating on me for months. She'd been using our shared money to fund affairs and apparently trying to hire escorts. When Sasha came back from her latest fake Phoenix conference, hotel records showed Denver. I confronted her with everything I'd printed out. She immediately went back to the same playbook that had worked before. "You violated my privacy. This is controlling behavior. I feel suffocated." Even when I showed her the escort service charges, she insisted there was no one, and that I was misinterpreting work expenses. Only when I laid out the travel records showing she'd lied about her location for every trip did she finally break down. But even then, she wouldn't explain anything. just kept crying and saying I wouldn't understand the pressure she'd been under. Here's where I might be the asshole. I told her she had 24 hours to move out, and I was filing for divorce immediately. No counseling, no second chances, no working through anything. Her sister Mira has been calling me non-stop, saying I'm being cruel and unforgiving. Her whole family is pressuring me to give Sasha another chance, saying everyone makes mistakes, and that marriage is about working through problems together. Sasha is claiming it was only emotional, never physical, just exploring options, because she felt trapped in our marriage. She's staying with Mira, and apparently telling everyone I'm financially controlling, and that's why she had to look elsewhere. But Reddit, I can't get past the systematic lying and gaslighting. For months, she made me apologize for asking basic questions about our shared finances, while she was literally using our money to fund affairs. The escort services alone were over $4,000 of our joint money. Update 1. First, let me address some questions from the comments. Yes, she really did make me apologize for asking about large charges on our shared credit card. The gaslighting was so effective that I actually felt guilty for basic financial transparency in our own marriage. Several people asked about the timeline and whether I'd gathered more evidence. I have, and it's worse than I originally thought. After Sasha moved out, I went through everything more carefully. Our joint checking account statements, credit card records, even her personal credit card that I'm an authorized user on. She forgot about that one. The systematic deception goes back over a year. What I initially thought was 6 months of affairs was actually 12 months. The pattern is crystal clear. Fake business trip announced on Monday. Mysterious charges Tuesday through Friday. Return home Sunday with elaborate stories about conferences and clients that never existed. The financial damage is staggering. Between the fake hotel stays, escort services, premium dating site memberships, expensive dinners, couples spa treatments, and what looks like gifts for whoever she was seeing, she spent over $15,000 of our joint money funding her double life. But here's what really opened my eyes to how calculated this was. I found evidence that she'd been systematically moving money from our joint savings into a separate account she opened 6 months ago. Small amounts, $300 here, $500 there. Nothing that would trigger immediate notice, but totaling nearly $8,000. This wasn't some confused woman having an emotional crisis. This was someone planning an exit strategy while gaslighting me into feeling guilty for asking basic questions about our finances. My co-worker Rylan, who went through a similar situation 2 years ago, said something that really stuck with me. The lying is bad enough, but the gaslighting is what kills you. Making you question your own reality for asking reasonable questions. That's psychological manipulation. That's exactly what happened. For months, I walked on eggshells about our finances because Sasha had trained me to feel controlling for wanting transparency in our marriage. The family pressure has been relentless. Sasha's sister Mira calls me every other day with some variation of, "Sasha made a mistake," but destroying the marriage isn't the answer. Her parents have reached out multiple times saying I'm throwing away 9 years over a rough patch. Yesterday, Mira showed up at my house uninvited with what she called Sasha's side of the story. According to this version, Sasha was feeling emotionally neglected because of my work schedule, 6 days a week, and the affairs were coping mechanisms for depression and loneliness. She never meant for it to go this far, Mira said. She was going to end it and come clean, but then you found out in the worst possible way. The rewriting of history is incredible. Sasha wasn't planning to come clean. She was planning to leave me while making me feel like the villain for noticing financial discrepancies. I asked Mira to explain the escort services and sugar daddy memberships. She claimed those were research, because Sasha was exploring her options, but never actually met anyone from those sites. Research that cost $4,000 over 8 months. Right. The most manipulative part of all this family pressure is how they keep framing my reaction as cruel and unforgiving. Like I'm the problem for not wanting to work through systematic deception and theft. Mira ended her visit by saying, "She's family, Colt. You don't just throw family away when things get hard." But that's exactly what Sasha did to me. She threw away our marriage the moment she started living a double life and making me apologize for asking legitimate questions. I'm proceeding with the divorce. My lawyer says the documented evidence of financial deception and infidelity makes this pretty straightforward from a legal standpoint. The hard part isn't the divorce process. It's accepting that someone I trusted completely was systematically lying to me for over a year while making me feel guilty for basic transparency expectations in our marriage. Update 2. The situation has gotten even more twisted, and I'm honestly documenting this now because the manipulation tactics are becoming insane. First, let me address what happened when I finally got the full truth out of Sasha. It wasn't pretty. Last week, I told her through Mira that I'd give her one chance to explain everything honestly before the divorce proceedings got ugly. Sasha came over Thursday night, and what followed was 3 hours of the most calculated emotional manipulation I've ever experienced. She started with the waterworks, tears, apologies, saying she never meant for any of this to happen. Classic playbook stuff. But when I pressed for specifics about the timeline, the lies, and especially the escort services, the real Sasha came out. "You don't understand the pressure I was under," she said. "Working in pharma sales, constantly competing with younger reps, feeling like I was failing at everything." I asked her to explain how that justified lying about her location for 12 months. "I needed escape. I needed to feel wanted and appreciated. You were always working, always tired, and I felt invisible in our marriage." Notice how quickly we went from her being the problem to me being the problem. Then I asked about the escort services and sugar daddy website memberships. That's when she completely lost it. Those were explorations, not actions. I was researching my options, trying to understand what else was out there. I never actually met anyone from those sites. "Sasha, you spent $4,000 on research? You wouldn't understand. You've never felt trapped the way I did." The conversation went in circles like this for an hour. Every question about her behavior got redirected to my shortcomings as a husband. Every specific lie got reframed as a symptom of her emotional needs not being met. But here's where it got really revealing. When I asked her about the separate bank account and the systematic money transfers, she finally admitted the truth. I was protecting myself financially. I could see this marriage wasn't working, and I needed to make sure I'd be okay when it ended. "So you were planning to leave me while making me feel guilty for asking about our finances?" I was preparing for possibilities. That's what smart women do. There it was. The whole sob story about emotional neglect and feeling trapped was bullshit. She'd been planning an exit strategy for months, while gaslighting me into feeling controlling for basic financial questions. The most infuriating part? She still insisted that my financial monitoring was what drove her to be secretive in the first place. If you hadn't made me feel like I needed permission for every purchase, none of this would have happened. I asked her to explain how asking about $2,500 unexplained charges constituted requiring permission for purchases. She couldn't answer that without exposing her manipulation tactics, so she just kept crying and saying I was twisting her words. That's when I realized something crucial. Sasha isn't capable of taking responsibility for her actions. Every lie, every betrayal, every dollar spent on affairs gets reframed as a reaction to something I did wrong. After she left, I called Rylan and told him about the conversation. He said something that really put it in perspective. "Colt, you're trying to get accountability from someone who's been systematically lying to you for over a year. That's like asking a burglar to explain why breaking into houses is wrong. They don't see it as wrong. They see it as justified by their circumstances." That's exactly right. Sasha genuinely believes that her feelings of being trapped justify everything she did. The lying, the financial deception, the gaslighting, all of it was reasonable responses to me being an inadequate husband. But here's what really sealed the deal for me. I found out through mutual friends that Sasha has been telling people a completely different version of events. According to her story, I was financially controlling and emotionally distant, so she sought connection elsewhere, and I discovered her emotional support system and blew up their marriage over it. No mention of the systematic lying about travel locations. No mention of using joint finances for affairs. No mention of escort services or sugar daddy websites. Just a story about a controlling husband who couldn't handle his wife finding emotional support. The rewriting of history is incredible, but it shows me exactly who I've been married to for 9 years. Someone who can look you in the eye, apologize for devastating betrayals, then immediately go tell everyone else that you're the villain in the story. My lawyer says the evidence we have makes this divorce pretty straightforward. The documented financial deception, the systematic lying, the gaslighting, it's all there in black and white. Mira called me yesterday with one final attempt at family pressure. Sasha realizes she made mistakes, but she's willing to do whatever it takes to save the marriage. Counseling, financial transparency, whatever you need. I told her it was too late for that. You can't rebuild trust with someone who spent a year making you apologize for asking reasonable questions while they systematically deceived you. But she's family, Colt. 9 years of marriage doesn't just disappear because of one rough patch. Mira, this wasn't a rough patch. This was a year-long campaign of deception and psychological manipulation. There's a difference. She hung up without responding. The divorce papers were filed yesterday. I'm done trying to get accountability from someone who's incapable of providing it. Final update. The biggest revelation came during the divorce proceedings when my lawyer subpoenaed Sasha's financial records. What we discovered completely vindicated my decision to proceed immediately with divorce instead of trying counseling. The separate bank account wasn't just for protecting herself. It was part of a comprehensive exit strategy she'd been planning for 8 months. She'd been consulting with a divorce attorney since October, researching property division laws, and building a narrative about emotional neglect and financial control to justify her actions. What my lawyer discovered completely blew my mind. Sasha started her first affair back in July, but by October she was already sitting in some divorce attorney's office getting advice about how to protect her assets. November rolls around and she opens that secret bank account. Then from December through March, while she's making me feel like a controlling asshole for asking about charges on our joint card, she's methodically moving our money into her private account and documenting every conversation to build her case about my financial abuse. I discovered everything in April, which means she'd been planning her exit for 6 months while perfecting her gaslighting techniques on me. This wasn't some confused woman having an emotional crisis. This was someone methodically planning to leave while systematically stealing marital assets and psychologically manipulating me to cover her tracks. The most damaging discovery was a series of text messages between Sasha and Mira from February. In them, Sasha explicitly states that she's training Colt not to ask questions about money, so she can finish building her exit fund without interference. Another message. The controlling husband angle is working perfectly. He actually apologized for asking about the escort charges, LOL. Reading those texts was devastating, but it also eliminated any remaining doubt about my decision. Someone who can laugh about manipulating their spouse into apologizing for reasonable financial questions isn't someone you can rebuild trust with. The family pressure continued right up until the final divorce hearing. Sasha's parents actually showed up to my workplace to make one last plea for reconciliation. She made mistakes, but she's learned from them, her father said. Don't you believe in forgiveness? I told him that forgiveness doesn't require staying married to someone who systematically deceives you. I can forgive Sasha for being human and making terrible choices, but I can't rebuild a life with someone who spent months training me to feel guilty for basic transparency expectations. 9 years of marriage should count for something, her mother added. It does count, I said. It counts as 9 years I spent with someone who was capable of this level of deception. That's important information. They left after that conversation, and I haven't heard from any of her family since. As for Sasha, she's apparently telling people that I chose divorce over working through problems, and that she dodged a bullet because my true controlling nature came out during the process. The narrative revision is incredible, but I'm not surprised. Someone who can spend a year gaslighting their spouse about financial transparency isn't going to suddenly develop accountability during a divorce. The financial settlement was pretty straightforward. Sasha had to repay the money she'd transferred to her separate account, and I kept most of our shared assets since she'd spent so much on affairs. She kept her car and her retirement account. My lawyer said it was one of the cleaner divorces he's handled because the evidence was so overwhelming that Sasha couldn't really contest anything. As for me, I'm doing really well. Work is going great. I got promoted to senior supervisor last month. I moved to a smaller place closer to downtown that actually feels like home instead of a crime scene. Most importantly, I've learned some valuable lessons about manipulation tactics. When someone makes you feel guilty for asking reasonable questions, they're usually hiding something significant. When someone consistently turns conversations about their behavior into discussions about your shortcomings, they're deflecting from accountability. I'm not bitter about the 9 years we had together. Most of them were genuinely good, and I learned a lot about myself and what I need in a relationship. But those good years don't obligate me to accept systematic deception and psychological manipulation. To anyone dealing with something similar, trust your instincts. If someone is making you apologize for basic transparency expectations in your relationship, something is seriously wrong. You're not controlling for wanting honesty from your partner. You're not unforgiving for refusing to accept systematic lies. The person who would have stayed and tried to work through this situation because marriage is forever is gone. What's left is someone who knows that some betrayals can't be counseled through, and that's okay. Sometimes the right thing to do is the thing that disappoints other people. I'm completely at peace with that choice.